What's up, everybody? Welcome to Books and Bourbon, episode 10. I'm one of your co-hosts, Caleb, along with my partners in crime, Matthew and at Dave Can Read. We are no longer going to refer to him as David. So we're glad to be here. This is episode 10, as I mentioned. So we've been doing this 10 straight weeks, which is incredible. We've reached the double digits. So for those that have been with us since the beginning, we're glad you're here. Thanks for putting up with some of our construction mess. As you can see, my background has improved tremendously. Matthew still looks stellar as it always has. And Dave keeps joining us from different locations. So we're always guessing as well. So if you are new to the show, welcome. If you want to go watch episodes 1 through 9, those are available on YouTube. Matthew talked about maybe throwing these into a podcast format. So if you guys like that, if you guys and gals, feel free to drop us a note and just say audio only is my jam. And I think we're going to look into throwing that up on, I guess, all the major podcast platforms, because why not? So we're glad you're here. The three of us just spent a fair amount of time together in Denver. So we did one of our quarterly meetups. It's hard to believe, but Q2, the second quarter, ends today. It's June 30 if you're watching this later, which means we are halfway through 2022. So the year has gone very quickly. At times it feels like it's gone slowly, but either way, here we are halfway through. So I hope each of you are doing well, whether you are already selling books, whether you are looking at selling books, whether you are ramped up and are a mega bookseller or whatever those terms are. I don't know if we've ever made a determination on what makes a mega seller mega, but maybe we should work on some of those. So we'll share a little bit here about kind of our team meetup and some of the ideas that we're kind of throwing out. But first, we do want to introduce today's guest, coming all the way from Salt Lake City. We have with us to experience episode number 10. We have Mark Sheffield. So Mark, say hello to everybody once Matthew gets you tossed in the feed here.
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
Awesome. Well, Mark runs a pretty unique business, and I think everybody's going to learn a ton from him. He operates currently in at least 3 different states that we know of. He got his business started when he was in college, like many of us did, but he did a little bit different approach than going to thrift stores and library sales. He actually kind of used a college class in entrepreneurship and actually went, I think, and raised some money and definitely had some help from those in the community. So he did a great job building a team around him. We're excited to hear a little bit more of that story, hopefully inspire some creativity from each of you. And then we'll kind of hear how he ramped up, progressed through that business and what he's doing today. So Mark, what's Salt Lake City like today? And I believe that's where you're at, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just like 30 minutes south of Salt Lake City. But today I think it's pretty warm. It's been on and off rain for like the last week. About what you can expect out here.
Nice. And what do summer temps typically look like out there?
Probably, I mean, it's like July, August, it usually gets up to like 90, 100. I spend a lot of my time also in Phoenix. I know, we were talking before the show with Matthew as well. So 100 out here is nothing compared to Phoenix weather every day down there. But
let's see what it is here today. I'm actually not even sure. I don't think I've been outside this morning.
Well, one of the
that way down there.
Each of you have nice dry climates, which is really helpful. I'm battling humidity in Indiana, which it does get up to 90, 95, but it's 99% humidity at times, so it feels a lot hotter.
It's actually 97 here right now.
Whoa,
really?
That's terrible. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 97 is weird for Arizona.
Not
let
bad
me
at
see
all.
what it is here. That's like nice weather for Arizona.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, that's almost pants weather. If it gets any cooler.
Yeah, we're looking at 86 here today, so yeah.
Well, Mark, where did we meet? I know that you've come to at least one Turn the Page, and I think we've crossed paths a few other times. Do you remember the first event that you came to?
I think we just talked on the phone maybe. Yeah, Caleb, you were awesome in helping, as we were kind of getting more into the bulk industry, and so I feel like I talked to you maybe on the phone 2 or 3 times. Like I just messaged you one day after seeing some of your videos, and I think I was on Scout IQ as well. And so I just, I was like, hey, can you just do like a 30-minute call with me or something? I have some questions, and then I went to like the like the charity event you do with the the golfing charity event where we all met down in Tucson, and Matthew was there too. But I think that's the first time I met you in person.
So you've not come to a Turn the Page then?
I haven't. Yeah, I think because I mean I feel like I wasn't really in the bulk industry up until right after COVID. So that's a year after COVID, after the restock limit fiasco.
Yep.
That Tucson event felt like a turn the page. Is probably what it is. There's a good group of sellers. We went out and did fun stuff. We rode mountain. That was the time we all rode mountain bikes together. We rented these mountain bikes. Avery Romer was there as well, and one of the pedals broke off like a mile into the trail. And so we gave that bike to Avery, and Avery had to try and pedal with one pedal all the way back on the trail. He actually somehow did it fairly well. It's harder than you'd think to ride with only one pedal.
I know, it was impressive. Yeah, because remember we got bit up so much by mosquitoes that night.
Mosquitoes were terrible.
That we turned right around and we came back the morning after, and then I got a cactus in my leg the morning after. On one of those
you have a picture of a giant piece of cactus just embedded in it. So that
cactus in my leg. Yeah,
I'm glad you were all right and didn't feel the need to sue us for damages.
Oh, I thought about it. No, that was fun. It was a good experience. Tell everyone I got a cactus in my leg and
full Arizona experience.
If you guys are watching and want to do some meetups, feel free. Just understand that selling books can be dangerous, and so can meeting up with other booksellers. So that was a fun event. For those that don't know, I participate in a golf marathon each year. I've done it 3 years now. So this last Monday actually was this Monday. We keep trying to remember what day it is. I know Matthew and I were struggling this week. Monday felt like Tuesday. I don't even know what today feels like. I got back home around 2 a.m. last night after flying in to Chicago and driving back over to Indiana. So if I'm falling asleep on the show, David and Matthew, please by all means step in. And looks like David's got some coffee, so maybe I'll have to do that as well. So for those that don't know, that's a bit of a fundraising thing we do. We did a meetup in Tucson. We're doing a meetup in August, just with a few individuals that made a big contribution this year. So thanks to those. We're going to be meeting up in my hometown of Winona Lake, Indiana. There's some good restaurants, some good lakes, and we'll probably do some mountain biking as well. Just no cactus to dodge up here. So that's a fun one. And I think we're going to be bringing back, I don't think we're going to call it Turn the Page. I think we're leaning towards the Scout IQ Sellers Summit or Seller Summit or something like that. And should we tip our hand to the location? We've been kind of hinting at it for a bit.
I think that's fine. Someone already did right here.
Oh, there it is. So we're looking at doing something in Vegas. I think we're going to try and do about 2 of these a year. I know we did some smaller events with Turn the Page, and we might do some like more regional meetups. But we're going to try and do 2 bigger events, 50 to 100 people, give or take. And we'll be doing Vegas. We'll be trying to figure out, I know flights are very expensive right now. Hotels are very expensive. Rental cars are starting to drop back off. I know several of you watching are probably doing Turo and doing the Airbnb, but with your cars as well. So that's a pretty cool business model to look into if you haven't yet. But we'll be trying to find some cheaper times of the year, probably not in the summer because it's brutally hot there. We'll wait for it to cool off a bit. And we'll get out and do an event in Vegas. So stay tuned for more details there. If we get on it, maybe next week, maybe Books and Bourbon 11 or 12, we'll have some content there. All right, so let's switch gears here. It is called Books and Bourbon. So what is everybody drinking today? I'm in a very green mood. I got the green lights, the green shirt, the green Whoop band, and I have a green glass, but I'm boring today. I'm just drinking water. We had a good time over the last couple days, and so I'm trying to let my system calm back down. Matthew or David? I think David, I saw you had some coffee.
Yeah, embarrassingly enough, I'm still at work, and we have a strict 0 tolerance alcohol policy here, and so just sticking to coffee today.
Beautiful.
Now we got
coffee with a few things mixed into it.
Yeah, after hearing the 0 tolerance,
I'm drinking very fine Trader Joe's instant coffee.
Only the finest instant coffee. Matthew, do you have anything special there?
No, I'm just drinking something light today too. Powerade.
Perfect.
Mixed with bourbon. I'm just kidding. No, it's not mixed. You got to hydrate and drink at the same time. You just got to mix them together there.
That's
Guys, I
spoken like
think after 3 episodes of none of us drinking, I think we're just gonna have to chop the bourbon part off.
Hey, we all
Yeah,
drank last. Caleb and I did last episode.
Okay, so this is the counter. We
Yeah.
got one episode this week, and if two more sequential episodes, I vote we call it Books and Dave.
Books and water.
we could go books and hats. Everybody, half of us are wearing hats anyway.
Yeah.
And then Mark, I believe you're not a drinker, so do you have water or anything fun at least from Salt Lake to experience?
I was drinking Propel, like the no calorie Gatorade. I'm going even one-upping Matthew. I'm trying to lose weight, so
Perfect.
going 0 calorie Powerade.
Well,
But I'm curious what with the no alcohol policy with you, Dave. I feel like there's got to be some story behind that. One thing happened at work, and while somebody was drunk.
Well, I mean, okay, so when I was younger, when I was in my early 20s, and it was just me and maybe 1 or 2 other people, I'd wake up at 10 a.m. This is all true. I'd wake up at 10 a.m. I'd go into like a little neighborhood bistro that was right by my house, and I would order a beer, an IPA, and like eggplant parmesan for breakfast. And I down that, go to work and get work, try to get some work done, but I was not productive. Like my golden hours were from like 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. That's when I got all my work done. And so like seeing how much alcohol slowed me down at work, I was like, I got to squeeze every last bit of work out of my guys. And so no alcohol until lunch here at my company. That's a joke.
Fair enough.
You said it so matter of fact. I just thought that was natural.
I thought that was the policy on the door.
Yeah.
No alcohol until lunch.
Yeah. Anyway,
I don't know. I was thinking it was going to be some story like your forklift operator knocked down all your shelves or something when he was had one too many.
I have heard. So we used to work with a Goodwill here, and one of the forklift drivers, he was like the nicest guy ever. His name is Art. I think it's okay for me to say, but he's probably not watching. Nicest guy ever. He worked with Goodwill for a number of years, and then one day he didn't show up, and I think I heard through the grapevine he showed up to work just plastered and ran into a wall. With a forklift, and I was just like, oh my god. It's like, you think driving under the influence is dangerous. Try moving thousands of pounds of books around a warehouse.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a recipe for disaster. Well, Matthew and Dave and I got a little tour in I think it was in Littleton of a rocker distillery. And it literally felt like a book warehouse where they have their production area where they ferment the grain and then they distill it out and then they just put it into storage. So just like merchant fulfilled storage, moving stuff around with forklifts, they had on this really heavy industrial racks. I think they said a barrel weighs 700 pounds?
Yeah, or 500. Well, full, right? I think it's like 500 pounds full.
Yeah, I think it's 500 pounds full. They're not as big a barrels as you'd think for 500 pounds too, so they're heavy.
Right. So that's not quite as heavy as a Gaylord of books, but still enough to definitely require some heavy machinery to move those suckers around.
Because they move them in groups of 4, don't they, on a pallet? So 2,000 pounds?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty substantial. Well, cool. Well, for those watching, we still don't have a podcast sponsor. I see Gatorade in the background. Mark was mentioning Propel. I've just got water, but we're still looking for a sponsor. If you'd like to sponsor the show, reach out. Mark actually has a special ask, which we'll get to when we talk about his business. So stay tuned for that because maybe somebody here could benefit. I think there could be something mutually beneficial there. So we've got a quick segment on Amazon news. I haven't seen anything this week necessarily. That's the downside of doing these every week is there's not a lot of huge updates from Amazon. Anybody else there, Mark or Dave or Matthew, have anything that you're seeing in the Amazon space or kind of any newsworthy notes?
I guess just a question. I mean, the question I was going to ask is, have FBA receiving times been slower than normal for anybody else?
I heard from one other person. I don't think it was you, Mark. I just recently spoke to another larger seller, and they mentioned slower check-in times, just waiting for 5 pallets to be checked in. This is in the Northeast, so it's not just you.
You've been sending quite a bit FBA, haven't you, David, recently?
Yeah, I've been sending a pallet.
Do they all go to Phoenix, though? Because every time I've shipped in the area, they all just go straight to Phoenix.
Yeah, I think ours are going to either Phoenix or Vegas. But yeah, I mean, mine go in really quick because I pay Amazon. I leave a $20 bill right on top of the pallet, and
Moves things along.
yeah, it moves things along.
Somehow I think with how closely Amazon watches their employees, that wouldn't fly.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, I mean, the funny thing is, we've almost never got, because the warehouse is it's like Goodyear, right? That's the Phoenix one. We almost always ship to Vegas. Like very rarely has Phoenix even been an option for us to ship to, even though we're in Phoenix. It's kind of interesting how that goes. We get Tucson sometimes, but
Interesting.
So I just looked at the last one. We sent 2 pallets on June 14th, so just over 2 weeks ago now. They were checked in at the warehouse on June 17, and receiving has started, and they haven't actually processed anything yet. And it says they'll confirm receipt of all the units on or before July 29. So they're giving themselves 6 weeks to get everything checked in.
yeah, and I think part of it, because I was kind of so it's interesting. So Mike just said there, yeah, GYR2 has been quick to check in. It's just funny to me how, it's like how we're in Phoenix and we don't get Phoenix. I talk to a lot of sellers in California, and seems like sometimes in California and Vegas, I guess that they get Phoenix a lot, but I'm in Phoenix and we get Vegas. I wonder if Amazon almost does that. Maybe they don't want sellers like showing up at the warehouse or something. Like I wonder what their reasoning is for that. It's interesting to me.
I show up at their warehouse one time and they change the policy for everything. It's just not fair.
We're definitely gonna have to call his Books and Dave if he's jacking things around for sure. I take it back. We shipped in about 1,800 units in those 2 pallets, and like 1,770 have been checked in, like located and checked in. There's like 20 that haven't yet, so that's pretty good. So that's still a 13-day. I don't know. I don't necessarily check it in general. So I think everything's checked in within 2 weeks. I don't know what normal check-in times you're seeing in the pallet game, either of you two.
Yeah, we're probably usually. I mean, sometimes we'll get from Utah. It's funny. All of our Utah shipments go to Vegas as well. But usually we probably see less than a week for ours.
That's not bad considering it is pallets. I know, Amazon is probably easy to check in a box or 2 at a time, but pallets is a little extra work to move those around in the warehouse, especially when there's backlogs.
For sure. Yeah, and I think Prime Day coming up is probably a big factor from what I was reading. I think that's like July 10th and 11th. I mean, that's probably, that should be kind of going away now, because I'm guessing the biggest rush would have been like a month before, right, where all these sellers are trying to really load up their accounts, and Amazon probably is trying to load up their own products. But yeah, we'll see. It's been kind of slow for us this week.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we've alluded to a little bit of the fact that you do bulk, but you didn't jump in with bulk. So let's go back a couple years, not all the way back to baby Mark, but let's go back to college Mark. And you said you studied entrepreneurship. So take us through, where'd you go to college? What were you studying? Were you showing signs of entrepreneurship? And then how did we kind of branch into that first little bit where you started dabbling in books?
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny. I never thought I didn't realize I kind of had the entrepreneurial bug growing up, but I kind of, looking back now, it's funny. I can kind of like see it. Like I was trying to like sell Pokemon cards door to door as a kid and stuff, and so, but that's only in like hindsight. Like, but when I was at college, I was studying, so I wanted to go to law school, so I was studying for the LSAT and stuff. And I'd kind of started, buying textbooks off like Facebook Marketplace and just from like classmates, during that time. I even tried to like buy books off Amazon. Actually, I went this. I just barely remembered this right now. Actually, that I went into the bookstore at my school, which is BYU, and took pictures of like all the tags of every book they were selling in the store, and the price they were selling it at. And I would try to like buy stuff I could get cheap off Amazon, and then I would go list it on Facebook Marketplace at my school, or list it. They had like this thing called the BYU Textbook Exchange, where the school created a place for students to do that. And so I would just try to sell them directly to students. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And then I started, when I was thinking of, or I was kind of set on going to law school, and I was already kind of running this, doing these books on the side. And so then I thought, I might as well do entrepreneurship as my undergrad, because it's supposed to be a really, like technically the easiest major in the business school. And, they don't really care what your major is in law school, and then from there, I guess we kind of started a different business model. I don't know if you want me to go into that now. But so the name of the company is Book Drop. It still is, but we don't, we do this still a lot, but it's not the majority of our business. Where basically we would get these donation bins, and on the bin it would say text a picture of your textbooks to this number, and then we'll give you a quote to your phone. Then just take a video of yourself basically dropping off the books in the box. And so then they would take like a 2-second video, drop the books in the box. We'd pay them through Venmo or PayPal. And then we just flip all the books on Amazon. And then basically to kind of, what would you call that? Like go back in time even before that, the way that idea started was when I was buying these books from students on college campuses. I was like, it sucks to meet with all these students on campus, like, especially if it's like a 19-year-old college student. She doesn't want to meet this random guy over text message, like
you have such a trusting face.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we're just, so eventually I was like, gosh, there's got to be a way to like get these books without like having this like in-person transaction. Like nobody wants to meet with me face to face. I don't want to meet with them either, and so basically I got this cardboard box.
Pause. Sorry to jump in, but let's pause just 1 second. So you did your entrepreneurship. You said, I'm going to do the easiest business major just so I can get through. I'll get through that. Then I'll get into, law school, post-grad type stuff. You were doing a little bit of book flipping. And then during college, you said, hey, I don't want to get a regular job. I want to just flip books. Is that kind of the progression into that?
So yeah, I kind of did a bad job of explaining it because my timeline has been so like one of those books that like goes in the future, and then they start like meeting in the middle. I didn't explain that super well because I was kind of far. I mean, I was not like far along into this when I started the major, but I mean, still at that time, like I didn't have like my like business partners yet or anything, and so it wasn't like a serious business by any means at that point. But I still it still was we were still buying back textbooks with this model when I was studying for the LSAT. So I was like, oh, maybe this will help me pay for law school, and so that was part of the reason to do the entrepreneurship major, was like maybe this business could turn into something like in the next 3 years that like maybe I make good enough money that I could like pay my way through law school with it. It was kind of the hope, at that point.
Moral of the story is be careful what you study, because it might, really impact
you. Might influence you a little bit.
So you said you were buying back books from students. Where were you marketing? Because I'm sure we'll have a handful of college kids that actually watch. They're either watching this live or are watching now. So you realized, hey, I can buy the books. You can sell them on the textbook exchange platform through the school itself. So that's a way to make a little money, just arbitraging. And the other way, you said, well, hey, I might as well go the other way too and try and buy back the books. You're probably competing with the bookstore, which usually isn't that hard to do. They don't typically offer a whole bunch for books. And so how were you figuring out what to pay for the books? Where'd you come up with the money to pay for the books? And how were you finding the people to sell them to you?
Oh, no.
And I guess he didn't like our question. So he
did not like that last question.
Well, I went too far. Sorry, Mark. He's jumping right back in.
There he is.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Everything.
I'm sorry if I offended you, Mark, but next time just say you don't want to answer the question.
But so the question was how was I advertising getting the books? Is that right?
Yeah, and then how'd you figure out what to pay for them? Just walk us through a little bit of that model in case there's somebody that's in college that says, hey, I kind of want to do this model as well.
Yeah, so I mean, so the way it started, was with, so it was after, I mean, initially it was just Facebook Marketplace, right? Like I would message people, I would see in groups and I would buy their books. But then, then when I kind of got sick of meeting people on campus, that's kind of when, the more creative, like kind of the creativity came in and trying to get the books, where like basically I would pass out flyers on people's doors. And so I would basically print out like, thousands of flyers, and I would just go tape them on on thousands and thousands of student apartments. And it would just say, text a picture of your books to this number. That was just kind of a test. It was like and then I would have, I had this I wish I should have pulled up the picture here. It would take me too long to find it now. But I had this really crappy like cardboard box that got all rained on, that right outside my apartment door. And I was recently married at this time, but it was like right outside my apartment door. It just said books, and so basically the student would text me a picture.
It didn't even say donate books. It just said books.
It just said books. Yeah. But that's where they would text me a picture of their books because they'd see the flyer. I would like look up the book on Amazon, and I would like pay them like a fourth or something of what the book sold for on Amazon, and then I would tell them, and actually this was at BYU. This is the crazy part, is I would pay the student initially before they even dropped off the books. So I would literally, I didn't even, partially, because I was like, oh, I'll just trust them. But the other part of it was like, there were so many people texting me that I didn't even have a way to like keep it. So I was just like, look, I'm going to pay you right now. The rest, come drop it over. And so that's what off in this box. And so then, that's when I got this like what do you call it? Like the big donation bin box. And I went and talked to like a bunch of companies. I was like, hey, can I put this outside your right next to campus? And
Mark, you're breaking up just a little bit here.
Can you guys still hear me? For some reason it just was.
Yeah, it's glitching a bit here. I don't know if you have a different Wi-Fi you can try, but we'll maybe give that a second to hopefully restore itself.
Funny because it's not being slow for me. Like I'm seeing like you guys like all super clear, and then randomly it's just like these 1 second spaz out.
Glitching out.
Yeah. But that's kind of.
We can hear you right now just fine. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I wonder what. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder what it's doing. But I mean, that's the kind of the origin of the business, then eventually, I would talk
I have just a few more questions just to jump in again here. So your original model was just say, hey, I'll buy back books, and you'd find a student. And did you from the very first time you started buying back books, would you ask them for a picture of the book up front or the ISBN, or were you meeting them in person and sort of scanning the book in front of them?
So initially, so when it was through Facebook Marketplace, I would just look up the book straight off Facebook, say the pictures. But when it was through text, I would have them text me the picture of the front cover and of the ISBN on the back.
Got it. So you started this with Facebook Marketplace, researching the book, and then saying, hey, I'm willing to pay a quarter of what the lowest used price is on Amazon. And if the price, let's say you're willing to pay 15, if they're selling it for 10, you're like, hey, I'll buy the book, obviously. And I'm assuming if they were asking 20, you'd kind of say, hey, I can give you 15 and just throw your price out and see what happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. So then you said, all right, I don't want to. So like business is just a series of solving problems. So the problem for you was you had to go to the students and they had to trust you enough, even with that nice face. They had to trust you that you weren't going to kill them in a back alley and steal their books. And you also wanted to find a way to sort of scale up. And so the next logical solution for you was to put that cardboard box that was probably moldy and musty, but do that. Bad. And you weren't tracking anything. You just trusted the students. Do you know at all? Obviously you didn't track, so it might be hard to answer this, but do you know if anybody actually took advantage and just took the money and didn't drop the books?
I'm sure that some people did, because I would track it a little bit, to like if it would have been like 20% of books missing, I would have known. I'm guessing it was maybe 2 or 3% of students that didn't. Also, it's like a Christian university, or it's funny. We tried it at a later date. We got, we got screwed over by some students in Vegas, big time at UNLV. I love UNLV, by the way. No problem with that. But yeah, I mean, it did. I think it worked better kind of a small town sort of university, where it's like I guess BYU is not like a small town per se, but it's not like the like metropolitan area, like jam packed with people, and so I mean, it is. I mean, that was a good thing is we could trust the students for the most part. But yeah, definitely.
So give us a little idea of the scale of this enterprise. So at its peak, before you kind of got into the book drop that you actually built and got investors in, when people were just dropping the books off, were you buying 10 books a week, 1,000 books a week? Like what's the rough scale of this enterprise?
Probably the highest we got to, we were probably paying out like $50,000 a month to students at the highest point.
50 grand, and an average book was probably what, $30 to $50?
That's good. I think our average pay per book was probably like 10, I would guess. We'd also have a lot of people donate books as well.
Is this one's book drop was up and running, or just with the individual cardboard box you were doing that kind of
Oh
volume?
no, this is when it was like up and running with the cardboard box, the scale, 'cause at that point, like I had my business partners that are, awesome and stuff. And, we had more of a team at that scale, but, initially when it was just the cardboard box, like probably the biggest it got to was maybe, I'm trying to think, like I would guess during finals week, we probably, I maybe bought like 1,000, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 textbooks would be my guess.
If you bought 2,000 books in the span of, let's call it 2 weeks, at an average price of about $10, that's 20 grand.
Oh my gosh, man! You just reminded me of a story where so I was in Idaho. This is the worst story to happen. And my brother, Venmo kicked us. So this is now Venmo actually has a bulk pay, so Venmo is owned by PayPal, but the banking industry, especially with payouts to consumers, is really, really complex. And a lot of they call know your customer laws and stuff. So essentially we had like 4 Venmo accounts because they all had like a payout limit of $4K a week. And so we crossed the limit on all of those, and we ended up getting all those accounts got shut down. And so this is when it was just at BYU. And so I was in Idaho, and we had a ton of students trying to drop their books off. So I called up my brother on the phone, and I'm like, hey, how much money do you have in your bank account? He's like, I think I have like 8K. I was like, I need you to go pull out like $6,000 and go give it to my business partner who's outside of one of the boxes. And so we had, again, this is probably something you couldn't do in a bigger city, but like we just had one of my business partners just sitting outside of this box with like he had like a US Army bag sort of thing, just like a Saplac bag full of just cash that we were just paying these students with out of this bag. That was the worst moment, but definitely went through some crazy things.
That's awesome.
Luckily, they changed their stuff later. And it's all good, but
well, like any business, sometimes you just have to get the job done. And a lot of us live in fear of Amazon, restricting us or shutting accounts down. We talked last week. One of our business bank accounts says they don't, we're not big enough. We don't have outside funding, and they don't want to serve us anymore, just on like our personal businesses. And so it's like, there's always something going on. In your case, you were battling banks and Venmo, and but you got the job done at the end of the day. You made it work. So you're in entrepreneurship school. You're studying business. At what point in this whole enterprise did you kind of have that light bulb moment where you said, "Wait a second, I bet there's something here that we could actually ramp up"?
It was this one day I was, it's like kind of like I was walking by, basically this office for, like the office. Sorry, let me silence my phone here real quick. Somebody keeps trying to call me.
Everybody's seeing you.
I was walking by like this office. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I wonder where that's coming from. It's like an unknown number. But I was walking by this office on campus. It was kind of like the entrepreneurship center at the school. And it was just like this one day. I don't know if it's like this like prompting from God or something. Like honestly, I just had this feeling that was like you should go into that office and talk to this professor who's the person that's the head of the school. And I was like, and I just stopped at the door. I just went in the door and just went and talked to him, and I didn't really know exactly what I was even going to say. But then I was just like, look, I have this business, and so we just started talking. And basically, and he's this really successful, like this guy, he started a lot of like multi-million-dollar companies and stuff. And so he was just like, look, he's like, you have this, you're doing this volume at this one school. He's like, why don't you do this at 100 schools or 500 schools? And I was like, I don't know, because I'd never really thought about it. Like, and so this is like right when I started the major, actually. And, and he's like, well, you should, he's like, look, let's go through like the unit economics of all of this and see, like, he's like, but I think you could actually scale this company. Like, this would be a good company. And so that's kind of like the light bulb moment for me, where it's like, oh, maybe this is like, maybe what I'm coming across here is something that's, could be bigger than, just one school paying for law school, and so that's where it started, I guess.
So you went from a random conversation where you kind of felt prompted to go in, and did you then kind of bring that plan back? I think there was some competition involved. So like, where did you go from just one box, buying back a few books, and I guess your brother was involved at one point, to like walk us through that next few steps in terms of going and making a presentation, and actually, I think you got some funding too.
Yeah, so we that's funny. Like, all the timeline in my head is so mixed up, honestly. I'm trying to think of exactly the order that things even happened in at this point, um but I mean, after that, so then I brought on like, so like the like partners in the business, which like, definitely you can't do it, any scalable business, like, you can't be in it alone. I'm sure you guys have learned that with Scout IQ and Pallet IQ, right? I mean, it's really cool what you've built, and I think it's because you guys have a good team there, and so we were kind of, I kind of like figured that out as well. It's like I can't do everything by myself, and so, eventually we think we bought like 4 or 5 more boxes after this. We did do like a few competitions at BYU, and got some, definitely, like some exposure to different investors, and and even just to mentors and advisors in the company, that have been, really, really helpful, which is another thing I would definitely recommend to anybody, starting a company is, learn, fail fast and learn from the mistakes of other people. You don't have to figure it out all yourself. And so we, bought, I think, like 4 more boxes, and then ultimately, I think, now we have like 300 or 200 of those like book drop boxes between like California, Arizona, Utah, and Texas. Although the Amazon restock limits absolutely were the biggest blow to the, the uppercut. And so that hit us hard.
Well, to reiterate on a couple of things you said there, one of the most important things when you build a team is just exactly what you said. One of the phrases I love is, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together or go with a team. And that's incredibly true. There's times when it's just you, and Dave and I were talking about this. So he joined our team a couple months back, and he was talking about, it's one of the first times in his life he's actually sort of reported up to somebody or had a team. And it's way different when you're the boss or the manager and you just say, hey, here's the rules. Or if it's just you don't ask anybody for permission, other than maybe you look in the mirror and ask yourself if it's okay. But it's really easy to be nimble. But what you sacrifice in nimbility is not a word, but what you sacrifice in agility and being quick, you sometimes lose in the ability to make well-informed decisions or guided decisions. And you can either build a team if you want to partner up with people. You can kind of surround yourself with those. You can also sort of build your own internal board. It doesn't have to be official. There's a ton of people that have been incredibly successful in business. A lot of times they'll be college professors. Sometimes they're still in industry. Sometimes they're retired. And a lot of those typically older men and women are more than happy to pour back into you, whether you pay them or not. I mean, offer to buy them lunch or coffee. But a lot of times you can get free advice just by asking. So that's really important, to surround yourself. If you're not great at networking, if you don't love it, having partners is great. I wouldn't trade it for anything. but it does sometimes slow things down if you get partners that don't always see eye to eye. Sometimes you have to deal with conflict. So you can build a board instead, and you can surround yourself with mentors. And if there's conflict, you can get rid of a mentor easier than getting rid of a business partner. But I think that's incredibly important. So if you guys are going alone right now, if you're watching this and maybe stuck, one, you've got a great community here. You can check out the Book Flipper community on Facebook. I love the book selling community in general. I mean, David and I talked not crazy regularly, but we talked often, even though we're technically competitors, and we learned from each other. I'm sure he was, mining me for information, and I was trying to learn more about his operation and just see what was out there. So take advantage of the community. That's why it's important to go to like the Turn the Page events. And who knows, maybe you'll find someone to partner with. Maybe you'll find someone that you can just, mentor or mentee. But that's a bit of a tangent, but I think it is an important one.
No, I agree though. I think that what you said is really important too. Like, yeah, I mean, because especially about like, yeah, definitely choosing partners carefully as well, and making sure you structure it right. Because yeah, I think it is pretty crucial to have partners. But if you just go out and get like a random person that has the exact same personality as you, and you split the company 50-50, that's about as much of a recipe for disaster as you can have, So I mean, like I would definitely, if you're serious about like raising money or, or really structuring the company, the right way, like, there's like, I would read the books, like the founders, for anyone listening, maybe I'd read the books, like the Founders Dilemmas, really good book, where I think they surveyed like, maybe like 10,000 different companies, startup companies, and found out like, what happened in each of those companies, what were the biggest founders' problems, with, basically when it came to the formation of the company and, people quitting, whatnot, that type of stuff. And then the other one is called Venture Deals. That definitely, like that book's about like raising money and forming a board and that type of stuff, but it's like, I mean, it's really important, I think, to get those things right. Because those are the type of things that can come back to bite you so hard, 2 years into the company, if something's wrong with the formation of your company. It's like the having like linemen on a football field, like you don't really notice them until they're gone and, and the quarterback gets sacked every time, but they're not like, it's just like the easy stuff that, needs to get out of the way.
Mark, I've got a question for you. You've mentioned raising money a few times now, and I was just wondering, have you raised any money for Book Drop, your business?
Yeah, we did. Let's see, like, that would have been like a year ago. Like so we raised like $1 million more or less just from like angel investors and like a smaller VC firm. I mean, it was, that we got money in our bank account. We didn't raise all that money at the same time, by the way, but some of that actually paid off previous debt we had for pins and stuff. So that wasn't all. I wish I could say it was all just, what's the saying, roses and walk in the park or whatever, but that, so we literally raised a lot of that money right like the day before the restock limits hit.
Oh man,
when the money hit our account, and we just barely bought like 500 or 600 bins. And so this was it's funny, like, so in one sense it came at the perfect time, because it's like, well, we could have been killed if it hadn't been for that, like I'm sure a lot of people were. But then in the other sense, it definitely, like it, yeah, it was kind of crazy. So that was literally the day before the restock limits hit, and I was in Hawaii.
What's crazy? All right, kind of side tangent. I was in Hawaii the same time that the restock limits hit, and so I
really, that's funny.
You probably were there at the same time. That's funny.
Yeah. Hey, so like you raised the money, and I guess what I'm curious about is what's the difference between you operating with your your own bootstrap business without external liquidity, being pumped in through your company, and like what was the biggest difference in your mind? I realize it didn't come right at the best time for you and the business, but is there a big takeaway or a big change that happened having that much money just enter into the business?
It's a good question. I'm trying to think like how to, like, I think there's some things And there's like some things looking back that we definitely would have done differently after raising the money. I mean, it's always hindsight 2020, right? Because I mean, again, it's like we pivoted the company so hard after the restock limits hit that like how we look now isn't even anything like we were before, And so like I feel like that almost affects my answer a lot, just because it was so, when we were raising the money, we weren't planning on growing, in the type of way that we have. Like we were planning on like, we were gonna have like book drop bins in every like we're like, hey, we're just gonna expand this and go every university in the whole country. Like that was the plan, right? But it definitely the restock limits made that harder for us at the moment because we were selling mostly FBA. But I mean, in terms of like changing the company structure, I mean that's just another thing where I would say like I like our investors that we've got, I mean, are amazing, and have been really easy to work with, and so, and have really good feedback and like good advice. And, but I mean, for example, I would never raise money from somebody. For example, if you take friends and family money, sometimes they call it like friends, family, and fools money, because it's, that can be kind of scary, and because if you take money from somebody that doesn't really have like a high net worth or really know that much about, angel investing or, then they might call you up a couple months later and be like, hey, like, I lost my job or my mortgage went bad or, like the stock market crashed, whatever happened, like give me my money back. And actually technically if somebody's not an accredited investor is what it's called. So if your net worth's not above like $1 million or you haven't had income of $200,000 in the last few years, then technically the SEC will allow those people can call you up and say, give me my money back. And they're right. They can take their money back. So, I mean, I guess that would be the advice for anybody is if you're going to, if you're going to take money, make sure that it's from people that you really want to work with and that you think are, competent and, and that aren't in a place where they're going to come screw you over down the line. Maybe like that it's like a good, like cohesive relationship, but I'm sure there's still a lot of lessons I'm going to be learning here. So.
Well, in general, the borrower is slave to the lender, and so money is great. It's an accelerant. If you have a good business model where the unit economics, like your professor told you, makes sense, then it's like, hey, this works in one location. We've then proved that it works in 3 and 5 and 10 and 20 locations. Now we just need money because bins. I know you've worked hard to buy them in bulk, but in general, a bin can run upwards of $1,000, right? 500 to $1,000. And then you've got logistics involved in not only dropping the bin somewhere, maybe getting permission to drop it somewhere, and then you've got logistics issues to go pick it up. So for those that don't understand what we're talking about with bins, it's typically like the size of a Gaylord. We're talking like basically a giant metal bin that would fit on a pallet. So about 4 foot by 4 foot. I think yours they're probably different sizes, but maybe as tall as 4 to 6 feet tall.
It's probably about what you said. It's like a pallet size could probably barely fit in it, and then probably 6 feet tall.
Yeah. So the traditional model, you guys have probably seen Better World Books bins out there. I think Thrift Books or Discover has some like donation bins. The typical model is drop a bin, get permission from like a Kroger or a Meijer or whatever grocery store chain or mall, exactly, and drop them off.
It is, yeah.
And then, well done, Matthew. People just drop books. Well, the interesting part of that game is you end up with a lot of duds, just like buying bulk books. You end up with a lot of trash. And I'm sure we actually went and picked through one of them in Tucson, I think.
Oh,
when we were there. And we found like underwear in the box and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there was a bra hanging on the edge.
Yeah.
Hanging on the edge of it, yep.
So, Mark, your model was a little bit different. We'll kind of pivot and get back to. I kind of want to hear how you dealt with the restock limits, how you pivoted your business, and then what you're doing in bulk now. But I think it's really fascinating hearing the genesis story. We could have this conversation for another 2 hours, but we'll respect the audience as well. The traditional donation bin model is where you just take everything. You would have logistics to go through, clean those, bring them in as bulk material, go through it. Use something like Pallet IQ or Needle Scan or something like that to process the books and go through and then list what you can, recycle what you can't. Your model was a little bit different in that you weren't taking everything. You were essentially getting pre-scanned books. So students would reach out they would send a photo. And I remember looking at the software that you had built through that college class, and it was pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah.
So you went from not even having a spreadsheet to track the orders and just trusting people that you'd pay them money and the book would show up, to you kind of developed a really systematized tool. And students would say, hey, I got this book. And you'd say, well, we can pay for these 3 out of 10. If you want to drop the rest, cool, we'll take them. But in general, we're only going to pay for these 3. Right. So you were only taking pre-selected material into the bins.
Exactly. Yeah, you put it. I mean, that's exactly right. We would just, and that made it nice because like the average value of a book we got, is compared to like the bulk model. I mean, the average book was worth 100 times as much. Probably literally 100 times as much. So it was just such a different game, which is part of the reason, right, that the restock limits hit us so hard, is because we had like 1,000 square foot warehouse, and and so that was kind of our model, right? It's like, well, we we're like, in the long run we'll figure out our own sales, but at least in the short run, let's just do it all FBA, because that way, we can just focus on being the best company for acquiring inventory, right? Like that was our thing. We're like, hey, we're good on the inventory side, right? Like we're better than anybody else at acquiring textbooks. We'll figure out the sales side down the road, but that's just not really our, worry right now. But yeah, definitely with COVID and the restock limits, that came back to bite us hard for sure.
Yeah, so in terms of logistics, you were starting to put these bins all over. Were you like paying individual students to show up and kind of process the inventory and ship it right to FBA? Or did you run a truck around and pick up the contents and bring it back to that 1,000 square foot warehouse?
We would run a truck around and get everything. Yeah. And, we would get like a 20-foot U-Haul, and by the end of we drive it like, to like 20 universities. And by the end, it would just be, an entire thing would just be full to the brim of textbooks. It's pretty crazy.
Which for those who don't know, that's probably about 2 to 3 times the weight load capacity that's allowed on those trucks.
The U-Haul, yeah.
If you are a U-Haul company, plug your ears, but be careful. If you guys ever do end up renting a U-Haul or similar truck, and you do want to fill it full of books, you are going to exceed any kind of weight limits. So just be cautious with that.
For sure.
So you were bringing everything back. You were being as lean as you could in terms of 1,000 square foot's not a ton of space in terms of processing. So you would drop the truck. I'm assuming your team would go back through it and then just list everything as fast as you could FBA, ship it out the door, and then just rinse and repeat the process, right?
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we didn't even like really sort anything at that point. Yeah, it was just ship everything to Amazon because it's all good pretty much.
Fantastic. So when the restock limits hit, you had just taken, you said $1 million of funding, and then the game changed. Did you try and hide it? Did you get out in front and communicate that to your investors? How did that conversation go? Because that had to be a difficult conversation to have.
Yeah, that was quite. I mean, so we at that point, I mean, we hadn't raised $1 million yet, but I mean, maybe like 500K, I think. But we had but a lot of that, again, we probably already had 200K in debt at that point, just because we'd been growing so rapidly. So the money. But anyways, yeah. So then it was just a matter of saying like, look, we gotta like pretty much we don't have a good outlet right now to sell these books. Also, it was going to be difficult to do merchant fulfilled with the books because if it's in Texas and our warehouse is in Utah and we're doing merchant fulfilled, then we have to ship it back to Utah first, and so we're like, dang, the cost of that is just going to be enormous. And here's the other thing about the restock limits. The reason the restock limits hit us so hard was specifically because we're doing textbooks, right? Because if we're only selling books in August and August, some in throughout the year, I guess, but mostly August, January, and kind of the summer. Then I think the restock limits hit in April, so that's kind of in our dead season, right? So I think we had like our restock limit started at like 5,000 units, and so we're like, what can we even do with 5,000 units? Like when the textbook season hits, we're screwed, and so like we've nowhere to move all this inventory, and it's like it's not profitable enough if we have to flip those books to wholesaler, right? It's like that because they're basically the same model as we are. Like maybe we make a little bit more by doing that, but that doesn't cover our rent, that doesn't cover payroll, and so I mean, yeah, we kind of got screwed big time by that, right? So we we're like, hey, we got to start. And that's actually when we started doing some donation bins. we just turned some of the book drop bins into donation bins, because we're like, okay, we just need some inventory that's fast moving, and then we put that more like locally, where we actually could do like merchant fulfilled and FBA at the same time. But yeah, definitely, and yeah, it was a pretty rough transition. So I mean, we lost a lot of money over those months, as I'm sure many sellers did. I remember, I think I was that last week when you and Dave were talking about that was pretty rough for your business as well, Dave.
The restock limit?
Oh, like the restock limits.
Well, we never did too much.
Or was COVID? You were saying, what was it that hit like a couple of years ago that you were saying like really like almost killed the business? I can't remember.
Okay, yeah, I lost one of the main suppliers. Like we had a pretty juicy agreement.
Gotcha. Yeah, sorry, I forgot what it was specifically, but yeah, those times are hard to go through. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So you went from donation bins. That was kind of your first iteration. When did you start implementing merchant fulfilled? Because in our business, I actually was operating out of my house. I had about a 2,000 square foot outbuilding on the property. And so I just built shelves around the perimeter of it to keep the floor space open. That's where we did all the FBA processing. And I actually just turned the entire perimeter, which actually helped really well for insulation in the winter. I turned that into just merchant fulfilled. And, I talked to Dave, I talked to other sellers that were doing a lot of merchant fulfilled and just built the systems out for it. And I just converted. And the business today, so I went 100% merchant fulfilled. I couldn't send in anything at the beginning of COVID. And then as the restock limits hit, I wasn't able to send in much. I mean, I got a pallet or two in while the limits kept dropping and dropping and dropping. So I had to just bite the bullet and jump into merchant fulfilled. And now my business, I think I looked last month, it's about 50-50 in terms of merchant fulfilled and FBA. So I could go 100% back to FBA now, but I know how to run that business. And part of the risk mitigation for me is saying, I want to make sure I have both skills figured out, because if this happens again, I want to know that I have enough capacity, that I have the skill sets available, and that we can do it. So did you convert right away to merchant fulfilled?
So yeah, at that time, again, it's hard for me to exactly remember. But I think during that time we had like 1,000 square foot like basement, and then this was in this like random like building. It was supposed to just be for storage, but we talked to the landlord. They're like, yeah, you can just operate out of it. And they had they didn't have a tenant in their upstairs, and so when this happened, we're like, hey, can we actually take the upstairs too? That was like 4,000 more square feet, but it was all office space. And so we did. If I remember, I think we set up merchant fulfilled there. And then at that time, we tried to sell a lot of just like really fast moving items on FBA, even if it was at a loss, just to like increase our restock limits. Because we still do pretty big volume with textbooks, and especially during that time we did. And so I guess we were trying to like figure out things in the short run while still, like preparing for like August, September.
Got it. And then then I know at some point you picked up a warehouse in Phoenix and you kind of picked up a bulk business. So what does your business look like today? How big of a role is Book Drop? And I apologize, we're bouncing around here a bit, but trying to kind of put a little bow on this and kind of get to the end of the story here, just in honoring people's time. So what does your business look like today, and what is the role of Book Drop versus the bulk business that you're doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, today, yeah, we definitely got, and so basically we acquired this. You obviously know Obed, because I met him when we were at the same, in Tucson. But so he was running a business down there in Phoenix, and restock limits had kind of, slapped or given them the uppercut to the face as well in Phoenix. And so basically we're like, look, we kind of made a deal to bring him on and operate the business down there. And we kind of started more bulk operation in Utah and Phoenix during that time, and and did a lot with donation bins as well, and tried to find a lot of different ways to acquire books. And so now today, we still do like book drop stuff. But the majority of the business now is getting books in bulk, just trying to get it from, a lot of sources and kind of like diversify our way of acquiring books. But textbooks like makes up like a pretty small part of the business at this point.
Fantastic. Well, it's really interesting hearing how you started, how you got into it in college, kind of branched up, and then continued to scale up. Do you regret not going to law school? Do you think that's something you may do if books fizzles out, or maybe if you're able to sell the business at some point down the road?
That's a good question. Probably, I don't see it anymore. That's funny. I was so set on it back then, but no, yeah, maybe in the long run, I'd see myself starting more companies or, yeah, I don't know, or going into VC or something. But it's hard for me to see myself going back to law school.
Well, bummer. I was going to say if you do end up going that direction, we could always use a good lawyer on staff here. We're not nearly that big to do it, but we love for you to pick us up as a client. But I guess that probably isn't in the cards. And then looking back during your time in college, is there anything that you would have done differently, knowing where the business is now, going through that whole process of getting venture capital? We talk about it's always best to learn from your mistakes. It's always most compelling to learn from your own mistakes, but it's always easier to learn from someone else's mistakes. And so that's one of the fun parts of having the guests on here. Matthew and I and Dave, of course, share a lot of our own stories and things we've learned. Is there any one or two things that stand out to you as you look back over kind of the initial stages of the company that you wish you could have just done differently?
Yeah, I'm trying to think through that one. I mean, yeah, it's funny, like looking back, I would say there's some things that definitely I feel like I did wrong. And there's other things that, I feel like that were just totally out of, like restock limits, right? That were kind of just out of our control. But I think kind of what you alluded to earlier in the call, one of the main benefits of a startup company is the ability to be nimble and, agile and pivot. So I think that's why it's like really important in any business, and with Book Drop at the beginning, we tried to be lean, but I think we could have been even more lean, more quick to change things like immediately if we see, something's not working out, trying to like kind of like what we did with the box, right? Like the cardboard box. I think the more stuff you can do like that, like what you call it, like minimum viable products, like just something that's, kind of a crappy beginning solution is okay. It's better to go the route of, being really, really cheap. And then, kind of once you learn what works or what your customer base wants, then you can spend more money on that or your focus more in on that. But I would do it that way rather than spending a lot of money thinking you already know exactly what way the business is going to go and then being wrong about it, So maybe we bought too many bins, for example. That could have been one of the issues looking back on that. But
well, and did you have the funding at that point when you bought all the bins?
We knew we were going to get the funding, and so we spent like at that point, and so we already because we got them overseas, we already spent a lot of money on them, and then when the funding came in, that's right when the restock limits hit.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting psychological discussion. It's always like it's safe to ramp up incrementally, and so we talk about margins a lot here. If you have $1,000 in the bank account and you're talking about making a $10 risk, you can absorb that. You can make 100 of those risks before you run out of money if none of them pan out. Versus if you have $1,000 in the bank and you're trying to make a $900 risk, you better be right. And hindsight's always 2020. When the best investments I've made, I always wish I'd put more money into it or ramped up more quickly. And of course, there's opposite ends of the spectrum when you put money into something and it doesn't do very well, and then you're kicking yourself. So that's a whole psychology question. And again, there's always something that's outside of our control. In fact, most of life is outside of our control. I think as business owners, we see that, we're more aware of it. And that's what keeps us nimble and on our toes. I do want to apologize. We are getting spammed quite a bit today. So
yeah, like a lot. Sorry about that.
seeing some comments. I don't know why the bots decided to pick our channel today. So if you guys are seeing comments, we apologize. We're blocking and doing things that we can, but we do apologize for that. Hopefully they stay far away. Mark, thanks for being here again. Your most precious resource is your time, and thanks for sharing a little over an hour with us. We're going to go to one last segment here, which is kind of the geek out segment or something that we're learning. Again, it doesn't have to be business related. It could be software, tech, because that's what we tend to enjoy. It could be something that you're picking up, like a new skill. I think Dave was talking about getting into welding or something else. So we'll kind of go around the horn here real quick. Just something you're learning. I'll start, and I may have shared this before, but so Matthew, Dave, and I all kind of had a team meeting, and one of the pieces of technology we use within our internal meetings is called Otter. And if I've mentioned this before, it's a great tool, so it's worth mentioning again. So Otter.ai, I believe, what it does is you just pop it up on your phone. It actually integrates with Zoom and Google, like Meet and Hangouts and whatnot. It records the entire conversation, but more than just recording it, it transcribes it. And then it also gives some feedback at the end. It says, Caleb, you spoke, 37% of the time. Matthew spoke 12%. David spoke whatever. So it kind of gives you an idea of who's leading the conversation. And then one of the coolest parts is it does a word cloud. So it takes all of the words that we use that day. So some of our conversations tend to relate more to bourbon and bottles, and other times it's books and software and API. But it pops that up, and that allows you to go back and see previous conversations and quickly understand what they're about. Everything's fully searchable. If you want to search, API, for example, or Salt Lake City or something, you can search all of your notes in one simple click. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but it does make the process of taking notes and going back through and deep diving much better. One of our developers is out of the country. He wasn't able to join in person. And so our 3-hour initial conversation that we had on Tuesday, he was able to go back in and kind of get the cliff notes and listen to it in the background and get caught up. So Otter is a phenomenal tool. There's a lot of applications. If you have employees, you can go back and follow up on conversations from an HR perspective as well. So that's something I've been playing around with and enjoying. Dave, you're up next.
All right. So I actually, just before this call, I had a really insightful conversation with a person who is full-time social media influencer, and she blew up during COVID and amassed, hundreds of thousands. I don't know exactly how many followers she has, but it's a lot. And just had a conversation about, social media, digital marketing, and how does that look in the business sense. And she had some really interesting and just fascinating insights into how brands today are integrating social media. And she talked about some of the things that they're doing wrong, like being too slow. A lot of these trends, I thought trends lasted like a couple of weeks, maybe a week. And she was like, no, David, like the trends you have to jump on in 3 days or they're gone. And I was like, wow, that's really quick. And some of the things that they're doing right. And it sounds like a lot of the companies that are doing it right, that have gotten a lot of traction over these last couple of years, have really figured out exactly how to optimize for the different algorithms and the different speed that you just really need to work in nowadays. And then I thought of like all the legacy companies that, we interact with, and then also my company and, Scout IQ and a lot of these other companies that I'm familiar with. And it's just really interesting to kind of see, like, I imagine it seems to me, it is to me what the internet and websites were for a lot of companies back in the late 90s. That's kind of how I look at it. And so I had a really good conversation with her, and it really sort of opened my eyes to, maybe different ways that I have to adapt to try to be more relevant to a whole demographic that's going to start going out there, making money and spending money here in the next decade.
Again, kind of that fits in with the conversation we were having about being nimble. It's great intel. Matthew, anything you've been kind of wrapping your mind around lately?
Within the past week, nothing major's coming to mind right now of something that's different. This isn't necessarily something I've learned yet, just a realization I had yesterday in the plane. I made the mistake of I had one bag for our trip, this ginormous bag, as David and Caleb can attest to. So I put it in the overhead bin. I normally always have like a carry-on bag and then a small personal bag. I just had one bag this time. I threw it in the bin, sat down. I was at the window. Of course, 2 people sat down. Plane's about to take off. I'm like, oh, dang it. I didn't get my headphones out or anything else. Like I don't have my headphones. I have my phone, but I can't do much without headphones in. And I was about to get up and get it. And then they're like, seatbelt sign on, turbulence, no one's getting out of their seat type thing. And so I was like, all right, well, I've got 2 hours of silence sitting here. I looked at my phone. Of course, none of my Kindle books were downloaded, so I had no books on my phone. And I was like, I'm just going to be sitting in silence here, looking out the window for a little bit. And I didn't realize how often I have constant distractions coming in, because it's weird when you're just forced to be silent and be kind of still with your mind. And it was just like I wanted to put something, watch something, see something, do something, have some stimulus. And it was an interesting experience just to be silent and just sitting there with your thoughts for whatever it was, hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours, however long that flight was. And I think there's big benefit in learning how to do that, not always have stimulus coming in from all directions. But I didn't realize how accustomed I was to that until I was forced to have that few moments of I can't do anything but just sit here with my thoughts for the next hour, 45, 2 hours. And so it's probably something I need to do. It's called meditation. I think most of the time people refer to it as when you're sitting there with just your thoughts, but do that more often to kind of get myself away from those distractions. So I was forced to meditate basically for an hour and 45 minutes is what I'm saying. But it was an interesting experience.
Wow, that was a good experience, and that you didn't pull the emergency exit.
Yeah, exactly. I thought about it.
I was going to say, it would have been great if Matthew was like, yeah, I had to sit in silence for 1 minute, 54 minutes, and 22 seconds. I counted.
Exactly. Well, we're gonna start joining Matthew on some meditation retreats. Mark, do you have anything that you've been picking up over the last week or a couple of weeks?
I was trying to think about it. I mean, not specifically that I can think of. I think what Matthew said that was really good. I feel like I'm such a distracted. Sometimes the best ideas come when you're just like sitting there doing nothing, honestly, or in the shower or something. And probably should give myself more of those times. I've been playing a lot of pickleball recently. I guess that's my, I need to work out. And so I've been getting into that.
How big are you into pickleball? Like just for fun every once in a while? Or are you like really into pickleball?
Probably somewhere between those two things. Like I play quite a bit. I have probably for like the last couple of years, but more recently I've been trying to actually play a lot. What about, do you play?
I've played in the past. The reason I ask is my wife's family has gone crazy with pickleball, her siblings and
really?
her parents. And so we did a family vacation together, and they're like talking pickleball strategy and watching past matches and talking about the professionals. They had a pickleball coach that came and taught them for one night they found in the city. And it was like, they're very, very into pickleball. It's just funny to see. I didn't know how big the pickleball, or how tight knit, I guess, the pickleball community was until I started hearing about it. It's something that those people really, really enjoy.
It's kind of taken off. I mean, especially with being in Arizona.
Recently taken off.
Arizona. It's like, I think it's the fastest growing sport in the world right now. It's kind of crazy, how big. Like there's this huge battle kind of between tennis and pickleball right now, because pickleball is kind of stealing all of the court real estate in the United States right now, because you can fit 4 pickleball courts in the size of 1 tennis court, and they're twice as busy, and 4 people play instead of 2 people playing on each court. So
it is easier to pick up than tennis too, as far as just being able to play. And so I could see how it would grow in popularity much faster, because an average person could just start at least trying to play it a little easier than tennis. Yeah, it's fun. I like it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, Mark, when you come to Indiana, we'll go down and play a little pickleball in the park then.
Let's do it. You can teach me how to hit a golf ball.
We'll do some mountain biking, and there's a lot of good lakes in the area, so we'll have a good time out here. Well, if we will take just a couple minutes, if you're okay with that, Mark. I saw a couple questions come in. If you're still watching, thank you for being here, for your time as well. And if you do have a question or two for Mark, we'll take just a couple and then wrap this up in about 5 minutes or less. So there was a couple that were there. Somebody said, where can I get a book bin? Sounds like you might have overbought them, so maybe that's an option. But in general, where can people find book bins?
So, I mean, I would say I mean, you can get them overseas. You can get it overseas or just used, like on eBay or online trying to find them. But um, yeah, not the easiest buying process. That's the truth.
I know a lot of people, I think Big Hearted Books went out of business and sold a bunch of them. If you keep your eyes on like Facebook Marketplace, I think there's always some options to pick up bins as well. Stephen Patterson says, I watched a couple episodes live and I'm in the process of building. It's a labor of love, 16 by 20 shed. So a couple hundred square feet there. I made a deal with Goodwill to get pallets of books at a pretty good price, I believe. So thank you. So cool, Stephen. It'll be fun to hear your story as you ramp up. Musashi-san says, will Scout IQ work if Amazon closes your account? Database mode will. You do need an Amazon account for live lookups and to list books. And if you're going to sell them, then yes. But if you want database mode, that is an option as well. And then as we're fielding a couple other questions, if anybody else has any, Mark, you mentioned that you might have some warehouse space in Houston to sublet. Is that still on the table?
That's true. Yes, we probably have. I think it's like 1,000 or maybe 1,500 square foot warehouse in Houston. Yeah, that we have like a year left on the lease or something. So if somebody's out there looking for a lease, yeah, reach out to me.
Hit them up. So how can people find you if they want to either follow your story? I know you're not super big on social media, but is there a good place or an email or some place that people can reach out, whether they want to learn about Houston or just stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so I would probably email's the best. Yeah, I just barely got Instagram again, but I probably will never really post anything on it. I just get it to follow you guys. But so my email is mark@bookdrop.com. Yeah, just mark@bookdrop.com.
Perfect. I think Matthew will probably drop that up there for everybody. He's usually ahead of it. Look at that. So mark@bookdrop.com. And I do want to just give a quick shout out to Sneaky Turtle. Don't know your real name, but we live in a world where we just have, screen names and everything. He says, what's up, guys? Wife is moving to full-time starting next week. Wish us luck. So I'm assuming that means full-time Amazon. So congrats on making the leap. And we look forward to cheering you on as well. And then Rob H, maybe the last question here, says, or just a note, after finally getting the buy box 3 days ago, I've now had 3 canceled orders in 24 hours. Is this common? Insane the difference in sales I'm seeing already. So for those that don't know, the buy box is what Amazon features on the product page. If you go to any Amazon product page, like just look up a book or look up a toy or something, you'll see, of course, buy from Amazon and the orange button typically, and then usually you'll see buy used, and that's considered the buy box. It usually goes to the lowest prime seller or the lowest prime offer from a reputable seller. So newer sellers typically are not eligible. Once you do become eligible, your sales will typically double relative to what you had before because so much of the volume on Amazon comes through the buy box. So that's very important. So cancellations, do you guys see a lot of cancellations? I don't think it's related to the buy box. It's probably just related to the fact that you're getting more sales. And then as a percentage of sales, I think the cancellations are ramping up. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to add there.
I don't know what would have caused that. Yeah, I don't think the buy box would have caused that.
And Louis says, when are you eligible? In general, I believe it's 5 feedback ratings is kind of what we've seen. Of course, like with anything on Amazon, they don't necessarily tell you directly, but feedback on Amazon does not work the same as it does on eBay. In fact, on Amazon, you typically get 1 review for every 200 orders. So you typically need to sell about 1,000 books before you're going to have 5 reviews. Merchant fulfilled is sometimes a really good way to get started. The buy box doesn't matter near as much. So that's a way to do it, as well as you can sneak some notes into the merchant fulfilled packaging that says, hey, if you like the book, would you consider leaving feedback? You can't ask for positive feedback. I don't think you're necessarily allowed to ask even for 5 stars. So check Amazon's rules there. But merchant fulfilled, you have that ability to sort of stuff that in and kind of make those requests and make maybe a handwritten note that could help get feedback faster as well. Rob says it took him about 3 months and only 1 feedback. So not always does it require 5. I think 5 might be one of the initial areas to jump in and get it. Maybe 3 months was a secondary check. So that helps as well. So with that, we're going to wrap up episode 10. Episode 11, we have a little bit of a YouTube celebrity or an Instagram celebrity, I suppose. It'll be Flips for Miles will be joining us next Thursday. So be sure to tune in there. He is a young entrepreneur, a budding entrepreneur, has done a fair amount of stuff with books, and he's done a lot of stuff on social media. So David, as you're exploring social media, that'll be a fun one to come back and pick Miles's brain. So with that, we're going to sign off. Thanks for being here, and be sure to tune in next week, same time, same place. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.